Hello students, welcome to section 1.5, angle relationships. In this video we'll talk about definitions, so when we come to class we can just focus on examples. So the objective for today, special pairs of angles, perpendicular lines, and assumptions we can make from a diagram. So the first definition we have for today, adjacent angles. So let's take a look at the word adjacent. Sometimes we say two desks are adjacent, okay, which technically means next to each other. So by definition, adjacent angles are two angles. I'll just write definition, okay, first. So adjacent angles are two angles that lie in the same plane and have a common vertex and a common side but no common interior points. Okay, so let's take a look at the example above so you can understand what it means. So adjacent angles in case number 1 would be angle 1 and angle 2. Okay, so we can say that angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent angles. Angle 1 and angle 2. Okay, they are adjacent angles because they share a common side, okay, and no common interior points. Now in this picture, okay, adjacent angles are angle 3 and angle 5. So you could say angle 3 and angle 5. Okay, now do we have another pair of adjacent angles? No. You cannot say that 4 and 3 are adjacent. They are not next to each other. They don't share a common side. Okay, so that was our first definition. The second definition is a linear pair. Okay, linear pair. If you look at the word linear pair, pair means two angles, and linear means when you put them together or next to each other, they will form straight line or straight angle. Okay, so by definition, adjacent angles that form a straight line. So in this example, angle 11 and angle 12, okay, are a linear pair. So in this example, linear pair would be angle 12 and angle 11. Okay, again, look at the words linear pair. That will help you to understand the definition. The next example, it's probably the most important concept of chapter 1 and in general in geometry, vertical angles. Okay, so what are vertical angles? Vertical angles are two non-adjacent angles. Non-adjacent means they are not next to each other, okay? They don't share a common side and are formed by two intersecting lines. I think if you take a look at the example, it will be a little bit easier. So in this example, okay, if you look at this example, angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles, okay? And another pair would be angle 2 and angle 4. Okay, so angle 1 and angle 2 are vertical angles, and angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles, and angle 2 and angle 4 are also vertical angles. Now, vertical angles are congruent. Okay, and in class I will demonstrate this. So vertical angles are congruent. That means that they have the same measure. Okay, so vertical angles are congruent. Vertical angles again, vertical angles are congruent. Okay, next page, perpendicular lines. Okay, in class we talked about parallel lines and perpendicular lines before. So by definition, perpendicular lines intersect at a right angle. Okay, and again, 90-degree indicates the two lines are perpendicular. Okay, so in this case, you see the symbol. Okay, in mathematics, if you put a box like this, it indicates that two lines are parallel. So angle L1, line L1 and line L2 are perpendicular. So this means that L1 line L1 is perpendicular to line L2. In the second example, we have also two lines perpendicular to each other, and we can say that in this case angle ZYM is congruent to angle XYM. And this also means that both angles, they are congruent, so therefore they measure 90 degrees. The third example, again, we know that that this angle is a right angle. We can say that measure of angle B is equal to 90 degrees, or we can say angle B is a right angle, or we can also say the measure of angle CBA or ABC is equal to 90 degrees. So the point is, every time you see this notation, this box, that indicates right angle, 90 degrees, perpendicular. It's very hard to explain because we can talk about this in different ways, but please know that we are trying to explain that the two lines are perpendicular, right angle, 90 degrees. Okay, so by definition, perpendicular lines that intersect a right angle. Okay, 90 degrees. So we have two more definitions for today. Very important definitions. Okay, complementary angles and supplementary angles. When we come to school, when I see you in class, I will talk about my personal story, because I remember complementary angles and supplementary angles when I was in college, and I have a quick story to tell you. But anyway, complementary angles are two angles with a sum of a measure of 90 degrees. In other words, two angles that add up to 90 degrees. So, example number one. Angle A is complementary to angle B. Okay, so if measure of angle A is equal to 90, then measure of angle B would be 60 degrees. Because 60 plus 30 equals 90. And two angles are complementary, if the sum of the measure is 90 degrees. So in this case, measure of angle A is 30, therefore measure of angle B will be 60. The second definition, supplementary angles. Supplementary angles, two angles with a sum of a measure of 180 degrees. In other words, if two angles are up to 180 degrees, then they are supplementary. So if angle C measures 30 degrees, measure of angle D would be 150. Why? Because 30 plus 150 equals 180. Okay? Again, supplementary angles are up to 180 degrees. So quickly, let's review what we learned today in class, or in this video. We talked about definitions, okay? Adjacent angles are two angles that lie in the same plane and have a common vertex and a common side, but no common interior points. Think about the word adjacent. Adjacent angles next to each other. The second definition, linear pair. Linear pair is a pair of adjacent angles with a non-common side that are opposite rays. And what's important about linear pair angles are supplementary, which means they are up to 180 degrees because they form a straight line. The third definition, vertical angles. I think in this class today, vertical angles are very, very, very important. So vertical angles are two non-adjacent angles formed by two intersecting lines. And the best way to visualize vertical angles is by picturing like a letter X and the angles across from each other. And finally, the last two definitions, complementary angles are two angles with the measures that have a sum of 90 degrees, and supplementary angles are two angles with the measures that have a sum of 180 degrees. Okay? So thank you very much for listening to this video, and let's have more let's talk in class about more if you have any questions. Thank you.